Good day, everyone. We will be discussing about the final stage of development, death and dying. Uniform Determination of Death Act or ODA define death as an individual who has sustained either irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions and the entire brain, including the brainstem, experiences an irreversible loss of all functions. It is necessary to determine death using recognized medical guidelines. The death process occurs to individuals who are terminal. Death is expected and a series of physical changes will occur to the person. So weeks before passing, the individual will experience minimal appetite, increase in the need for sleep, increased weakness, incontinence or the loss self-restraint of bladder and bowel, restlessness or disorientation, increased need for assistance with care. In the days before passing, decreased level of consciousness, pauses in breathing, decreased blood pressure, decreased urine volume and urine color darkens, murmuring to people others cannot see, reaching in air or picking at covers, need for assistance with all care. So the last phase will be days and hours before passing. Decreased level of consciousness or comatose-like state, inability to swallow, pauses in breathing become longer, shallow breaths, weak or absent pulse, knees, feet, or hands becoming cool or cold, knees, feet, and hand discoloring to purplish blue hue, noisy breathing due to relaxed throat muscles, often called a death rattle, skin color becoming pale and waxen. Social death occurs when others begin to dehumanize and withdraw from someone who is terminally ill or has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Dehumanization includes ignoring them, talking about them if they were not present, making decisions without consulting them first, and forcing unwanted procedures. Common causes of death, we have the top three, which is the ischemic heart disease, stroke, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. These are non-communicable diseases. Tobacco use is attributed as one of the top killers and is often the hidden cause behind many of the diseases that result in death, such as heart disease and chronic lung diseases.
Suicide. According to the latest research from CDC, the suicide rate increased 33% from 1991 to 2017. In the United States, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death of but it ranks as the second leading cause of death for those 10 to 34 and the fourth leading cause for those aged 35 to 54 overall. Approximately 45,000 people died in suicide in 2016. Suicide and gender. Suicide rates increased for both males and females, especially after 2006. For males, the rate increased 26% from 17.8 per 100,000 males in 1999 to 22.4 per 100,000 in 2017. For females, the rate increased 53% from 4.0 per 100,000 females in 1999 to 6.1 per 100,000 in 2017. The highest female rates were for those aged 45 or 41 to 64. In contrast, men aged 75 and older had the highest rates, although the rate for older males had decreased from 1999. Deaths of despair. While the suicide rate has increased in America, during the same period it has gone down in other countries including Canada, Japan, China, Russia, United Kingdom, Germany, and most of Western Europe. Globally, suicide rates have fallen when the living conditions have improved. Not surprisingly, the opposite is true, and thus, a decrease in economic and social well-being referred to as death and despair has been linked to suicides in America. And there are warning signs of suicides. These are the feeling like a burden, being isolated, increased anxiety, feeling trapped or in unbearable pain, increased substance use, looking for a way to access settlements means increased anger or rage, the extreme mood swings, expressing hopelessness, sleeping too little or too much, talking or posting about wanting to die, and making plans for suicide. Prevention. To prevent this, know the warning signs of suicide and encourage someone to get treatment are things that everyone can do to address the increase in the suicide rate. Also, we should observe our friends or the people around us, especially our loved ones. Developmental prevention of death and death anxiety. The concept of death changes as we develop from early childhood to late adulthood. Cognitive development, suicide, suicidal beliefs, familial responsibilities, and personal experiences all shape an individual's view of death. In infancy, infants do not comprehend death. However, they do react to desperation caused by death. They become sluggish and quiet, no longer smile or hope, sleep less, and develop physical symptoms such as weight loss. In early childhood, as we recall from Piaget's pre-operational stage of cognitive development, young children experience difficulty distinguishing reality from fantasy. They are lack of understanding about death. Don't see death as permanent. Assume it temporary irrever- or reversible. Think the person is sleeping and believe that they can wish the person back to life. During middle childhood, they begin to understand the finality of death. Up until the age of 9, they may still participate in magical thinking and believe that through their thoughts, they can bring someone to life. So they also may think that they could have prevented the death in some ways and feel guilty and responsible for the death. Children understand the finality of death and know that everyone will die, including themselves. However, they may also think people die because of some wrongdoing on the part of the deceased. They may develop fears for their parents or to their parents dying and continue to feel guilty if a loved one dies. Adolescents, they understand death as well as adults. They can now think abstractly about death, philosophize about it, and, ponder their own lack of existence. Some of them became fascinated with death and reflect on their own. Consequently, they often engage in risky behaviors such as substance use, unsafe sexual behavior, and reckless driving, thinking that they are invisible. In early adulthood, there are differences in the level of fear and anxiety. anxiety. Concerning death experience by those in different age groups, death experience by those in different age groups, they typically expect a long life ahead of them and consequently do not think about nor worry about them. Till adulthood, childhood, they report more fear of death than those in either early and late adulthood. They, they offer provide assistance for their children and parents, and they feel anxiety about them to care for themselves. And lastly, the late adulthood. They're the one must fear death, but those they're the one that must fear death, but those in late adulthood have lower fears of death than other adults. Why is it? It is because elder elder adults have fewer caregiving responsibilities and are not worried about leaving family members on their own. They also have more time to complete activities that they had planned in their lives. Additionally, they have less anxiety because they have already experienced the death of loved ones. It is not death itself concerns them, rather, it is having control over how they die.
Cultural differences in end-of-life decisions. Cultural factors strongly influences how doctors, other healthcare providers, and family members communicate bad news to patients. The expectations regarding who makes the healthcare decisions and attitudes about end-of-life care. In Western countries, doctors take the approach that patients should be told the truth about their health. But outside Western nations, doctors and family members may conceal the full nature of a terminal illness, as revealing such information is viewed as harmful to the patient. Indian doctors abide by the family's wishes and withhold information from the patient, while in Germany, doctors are legally required to inform the patient. In addition, other cultures like Hispanic, Chinese, and Pakistani actively protect terminally ill patients from knowing about their illness. In Western countries, they view the patient as autonomous in healthcare decisions. However, in other countries, the family or community plays the main role or decisions are made primarily by medical professionals or the doctors in consent with the family make decisions for the patient. For instance, in many Asian cultures, illness is viewed as a family event, not just something that impacts the individual patient. Thus, there is an expectation that the family has a say in the healthcare decision. As many cultures attribute high regard and respect for doctors, patients and families may defer some of the end-life decisions making to the medical professionals. According to research surveys, that may not be a comfortable topic to ponder, but 37% of the survey respondents had given a great deal of thought about their end-of-life wishes. 35% having put this in writing, and over 25% had given no thought to this issue. And they also found out that there were clear racial and ethnic differences in end-of-life wishes. The figure shows the personal preferences by race and ethnicity that the majority of the Black and Hispanic prefer that everything should be done to keep them alive with 61% and 55% respectively. Euthanasia. Euthanasia is defined as intentionally ending one's life when suffering from a terminal illness or severe disability. It is separated into active euthanasia and passive euthanasia. Active euthanasia, which is intentionally causing death, usually through a lethal dose of medication. Passive euthanasia occurs when life-sustaining support is withdrawn. This can occur through the removal of respirator, feeding tube, or heart-lung machine. There is also a form of active euthanasia whereby a physician prescribes the means by which a person can die called physician-assisted dying. There were also a disagreement between those who support physician-assisted dying and those who do not. It includes 1. Whether a person has a legal right to die. 2. Whether active euthanasia would become a slippery rope and start a trend to legalize death for individuals who may be disabled or unable to keep consent. 3. How to interpret the Hippocratic Oath and what it exactly means for physicians to do harm. 4. Whether the government should be involved in end-of-life decisions. And lastly, specific religious restrictions against deliberately ending a life. Religious practices after death. Funeral rites are expressions of laws that reflect personal and cultural beliefs about the meaning of death and afterlife. These rites and ceremonies send the message that the death is real and allow friends and loved ones to express their love and duty to those who die. The following are some of the religious practices regarding death. However, individual religious interpretations and practices may occur. In Hindu, they believe in reincarnation accelerates the funeral rituals, and deceased Hindus are cremated as soon as possible. Once the body is cremated, the ashes are collected, and if possible, dispensed in one of India's holy rivers. In Judaism, the deceased is first washed and then wrapped in a simple white shawl. Males are also wrapped in their prayer shawls. The burial should be done as soon as possible, and after the burial, the family member gathers in one home, and this is referred to as sitting Shiva. In Muslim, the deceased are buried as soon as possible, and it is a requirement that the community should be involved in the ritual. The body is first washed and wrapped in a plain white shroud called kafan, and funeral prayers are followed by the burial. The shrouded dead are placed directly in the earth without a casket, and deep enough not to be disturbed. They are also positioned in the earth on the right side facing Mecca, Saudi Arabia. In Roman Catholic, the individual is anointed by a priest before their death, where the priest recites a prayer and applies concentrated oil to the forehead and hands. The funeral rites consist of 3 parts. First, the wake that occurs in a funeral parlor where the body is present and prayers and eulogies are offered by family and friends. Next is the funeral mass. And after the funeral mass, the wake is moved to the cemetery where a blessing of a grave, scripture reading, and prayers conclude the funeral ritual. Green burial. Green burial is referred as the attempt to reduce the impact on the environment at every stage of the funeral. This can include using recycled paper, biodegradable caskets, cotton shroud in the place of any casket, formaldehyde-free or no embalming, and trying to maintain the natural environment around the burial sites. According to the National Funeral Directors Association, many cemeteries have reported that consumers are requesting green burial funeral options since many of the add-ons of the traditional burial, such as concrete vault, embalming, and casket are not required. And since green burial, the cost can be substantially less.
Hi, good day everyone. I am Kaye Relayosa, and we're going to tackle about the grief bereavement in the morning. Some point in our lives, we all face death. Certainly our own, as well as the death of loved ones, friends, and even strangers. Although there's nothing more inevitable in life, death remains a pretty emotion-laden topic. Certainly, little's more stressful. Little's more stressful than the death of our loved ones, or the contemplation of our own imminent death. and preparing for death is one of the most crucial development tasks. A few generations ago, talk of death was taboo. The topic was never mentioned to the young people that changed. However, with the pioneering work of Elizabeth Rubados in 1969, who brought the subject that those facing impending death stand to move through 5 broad stages. And first is in denial stage. Because of course at first we are denied that, like in this stage people resist that the idea that they are dying even if told that their chances for survival are small. They refuse to admit that they are facing death. They were like, no, I'm not going to die because I have things to do. I have dreams. I have kids or everything like that. And in this denial stage, it leads to the second stage with it, which is anger. After moving beyond the denial stage, dying people become angry at people around them because there is insecure who are still in good health, angry at medical professionals for being ineffective, and angry at God. The third stage is bargaining anger. Leads to bargaining in which the dying try to think of ways to postpone death. They may decide to dedicate their lives to religion if God saves them. They may say, if only I can live to see my second son married, I will accept that then. Those like people like that. They were like, God, please help me to get through with this. God, I want to see my apos. I want to see my granddaughters success in life. So, God, dedicate your life. So please give me second chances like that. And with this, it can lead to the fourth stage, which is the depression. When dying people came to feel that their bargaining is used, they move on the next stage, depression. They realize in their lives really are coming to an end, which leads them to you preparatory grief for their own deaths. And the last stage is the fifth and last stage is the acceptance. In this stage, people accept impending death. Usually they're unemotional and uncommunicative. It is as if they made peace with themselves and are expecting death with no bitterness. It is important to keep in mind that not everyone experiences each of these stages in the same way. Now, let us review. Coping with death after a loved one has died.
Listen, there's no right or wrong way to deal with the loss of a loved one. You can expect grieving to be rough, and it's different for every single person. Another important thing, it's not just a matter of coping with loss. It's about coping with change. And that, Wellcasters, takes a lot of time. Today on Wellcast, we're dealing with a pretty difficult subject. How do you deal with the death of a loved one? How do you live your life in the face of a life-changing event? We don't have all the answers, and honestly, you're going to have to work through your pain in your own way, at your own pace. But if you're looking for it, we do have some advice. First things first, you need to remember that grief is a process and not a task. You might have heard of a popular theory that breaks up bereavement into stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. While you might identify with some or all of these steps, you gotta remember that grief is less like a staircase and more like a roller coaster. There are peaks and dips, and they don't always happen in predictable ways. You might feel better for a while and then worse, and that's okay. It's natural to have an uneven journey with your grief. Don't be afraid of the pain. You shouldn't try to stuff your sorrow away into a place where you don't have to deal with it. It's just going to stay there. In order for you to work through your grief, you're first going to have to acknowledge that it exists. There are a lot of ways to do this. You might have to be alone for a bit. Maybe you need to write down your feelings in a journal or talk to someone. Do things that make you happy. When you're grieving, it's sometimes difficult to hold on to who you are. After all, so much of your energy is focused on the mourning of your loved one, which is fair, but it's easy to get sucked into a mind space where you can't even remember your former self. We want to tell you it's okay to take time to do the things that make you feel like yourself and give you joy. Recognize the relationship between the mind and the body. When you're experiencing grief, it's really easy to forget the things that you usually do as a matter of routine. Taking a shower, getting enough sleep, eating. Neglecting your physical health is only going to take a greater toll on your mental health, which is taking a pretty significant hit right now. So do yourself a favor and do us a favor and make an effort to take care of you. It's what your loved one would want. Reach out. Wellcasters, if you take nothing else away from this episode, please remember this. You do not have to be alone in your grief. If your feelings are too overwhelming for you to sort out, that's okay. But go to someone else for help. It can be someone you know, a family member or a friend, or it can be a therapist or a professional who knows how to help people deal with this exact situation that you find yourself in right now. Just the act of talking out loud about your feelings can be incredibly cathartic. Finding someone who can help you sort them and work through them is even better. Tweet us at WatchWellcast, email us at watchwellcast@gmail.com, or leave a comment down below. We'll see you next time.
Now, let's move on with the bereavement. It is the process of recovering after the death of someone to whom we feel close to. People who were close to that person are known as the bereaved. Grief and mourning are two common emotions during bereavement. Grief is the emotional response to loss. It is usually involved a variety of combination of feelings such as sadness, longing, bewilderment, anguish, self-pity, anger, guilt, loneliness, as well as relief. The grieving process may last a few months or even continue throughout one's lifetime. However, long it lasts grieving usually encompasses physical, behavioral, and emotional responses in terms of behavior. For example, bereaved people may talk about the disease and the circumstances of the death. Others may talk about everything but their loss because it's too painful to do so. Mourning. It is a customary outward expression of grief. Mourning ranges from normal grief to pathological melancholy that may lead to physical or mental illness, whether it's the death of a child, parent, or grandparent. Most people don't recover and end mourning. Instead, they adapt and change, coping with that varies in different social and cultural groups. Now, let us review the same phase of grief after a loved one have died. In the intermediate stage of grief, people often idealize loved ones who have died and many even actively search for them. For example, a widow may see her husband's face in a crowd. Will the grieving person finally accept the loss, disorientation, anguish, and despair may follow the survivor may feel aimless without interest, purpose, or motivation, and unable to make decisions and lacking in self-confidence. For many grieving people, holidays are especially difficult because they are so connected to family customs and rituals. The buried persons may dream to the normal festivities, because everything from cards and decorations, especially to meals and traditional music, may remind him or her of the loved one who has died. Counselors and therapists suggest that the bereaved not force themselves to participate in special family tradition. If doing so, it is too painful. Bereavement therapy and self-help groups offer support, but there is similar healing power in the passing of time, the support from friends, and the act of giving support and help to others. Grieving spouse is who talk often with others or receive grief counseling, adjust about as well as those who grieve more privately face, and that with dignity and openness help people complete the life cycle with a sense of life meaningfulness, unity, the sense that their experience has been good, that life and death are parts of an ongoing cycle. Life itself can be affirmed even at death. This is especially so for people who review their lives not with despair, but with what Eric Erikson called a sense of integrity, a feeling that one's life has been meaningful and worthwhile. That concludes of my presentation of the grief, bereavement, and mourning. Thank you for listening.
I think that death and dying is really important because we're all going to die anyway. The more we try to ignore, we try to stop the fear of death and dying, it grows. And it grows underground and it will hunt us. But if you know how to face it and transform it, actually the death is really useful. And for me, it's a great, enlightening, great kind of like benefit for me. So there's a lot of great insights comes when you're really facing the death and dying. So, for example, for me, when I really accept the fear of death and dying, then it really gives me that my mind become more open, actually, more free, and at the same time, the normal what I call fixed mind, the frozen mind, easy to let go. The nature of looking at death and dying, try to learn about death and dying and use that as meditation, that has automatically a lot of power to really subdue the fixed mind, the misconception of seeing the reality.